We are finally back. It's been a little while, but we find ourselves in Advent. What is it? And let's talk about that right here on Bald and Biblical. It's been a crazy season for what's going on personally in my life. New room, new setup, new monitor. There's a lot of newness that we had to wait on in order to get to this point. But honestly, I'm pretty happy with the break that we've taken because now we find ourselves in a really exciting time in the Christian year. And for a lot of people who might not be familiar with Christianity, there's a lot of questions that surround what is going on in churches near and far when it comes to this season called Advent. The word Advent is derived from the Latin term adventus, and that just means, loosely translated into the word coming. And that's where the Christian church gets this tradition of anticipating the celebration or the coming of Jesus's birth. And early on, in the about 4th to 5th century, the early church was able to zone in on some traditions that would eventually become this time of celebration for when the early church would spend their time during this particular part of the year in anticipation. But it's not traditionally derived in waiting for Christmas time. In the early 4th to 5th century, early churches in Spain and Portugal would wait for what would be coming in the Feast of Epiphany, which is a feast that would take place in January, and traditionally in the times of the early church. That's when new people within the Christian church became baptized into the origins of the church. And so you would have this anticipation, this eagerness almost from the early church to wait in celebration for the newness that God was going to bring into their physical church family as new people were ushered in as members of the body. So that's not really what the church looks like today. We're not waiting for people to get baptized in January. In fact, a lot of denominations will seek to baptize people right on the spot or after a short time of confirmation. And you have this period in time in which the church kind of sits in December and waits. Well, waits for what? What is the point of Advent if it's not to mark the baptismal celebration of the people within your body? We can also find that answer deep within church history, and we see around the 6th century when Rome, as so often Rome does, get their hands on early church traditions. It wasn't the fact that people are waiting on folks to get baptized. We see this fundamental change within the church happening where the Church of Rome, which at this time Christianity is a cool thing to do now, these guys make Advent a season of anticipation, but not for the celebration of Jesus' birth, rather the anticipation of the coming of Christ, in meaning the second coming of Christ. So you would have this church wait in anticipation for what might be Christ's second coming. And so that's where we see the fundamental shift between the celebration of folks getting baptized in the church, which is traditionally, historically, the rooted form of Advent, changing its focus over towards the personhood of Christ. And that's what we see Advent today in the 20th century, where the church focuses not inwardly on ourselves, but on the personhood of Christ, mainly seen throughout the birth story of Jesus. The Christian church finds themselves in a, peculiar situation that, to be honest, not a lot of early Christians ever thought we would be in. You see, when Jesus ascends to heaven, and in the Christian faith, he tells those who surround him, now go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and telling them everything that I have taught you. And it's in that moment where we see God opening the door for folks like you and me to be a part of forming and shaping and molding the church. And we call this age the church age. Traditionally speaking, the early Christians, those who followed Jesus while he was on earth, just figured that as soon as the Messiah defeats death and fulfills the ancient prophecies of what we see in Judaism, that would be the time in which God comes down, dwells with man, and everything's great. But Jesus incorporates the church into a work that says, no, proclaim this good news, and I will come back to make all things new one day. And this is a point in time in which the church reflects the attitude as seen in Acts 2 verse 17. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. We see here this phrasing, in those days, or in those last days, and this is the age in which the church sits in. Now, I'm not saying that the world is ending and that we're in the final countdown of what this earth looks like. I'm just simply saying that this is the final earthly chapter of who we are before Christ comes again. And in the Christian faith, this season of Advent has turned to the coming of Jesus. You hear so often, O come, Emmanuel, God with us. And these are terms that reflect the eager heart of the church that says, Lord, we know that you've placed us in a time such as this. We're still waiting. We still eagerly await your return. But in the meantime, we're going to focus on the personhood of Jesus, who you are during this time of waiting. And that is the fundamental shift of Advent historically that we've seen, focused first on the people of the church, changing into more of what we see today, where for almost the entire month of December, the Christian church looks upward to Jesus and goes, we're waiting. Oh, come, dwell in our midst so that your name might be proclaimed. And I hope that during this Advent season, as we take this journey through Bald and Biblical, through this time of Advent, we might be able to see ways where we can dwell on just how good God is during a time and season where men and women alike are just a little bit more eager to be kind to one another, to be patient with one another. And through those interactions, we might be able to show the personhood of Jesus with others. I can't wait to talk about this with you next time, right here on Bald and Biblical.